My son was kidnapped in a white van. He returned, but something is really wrong with him. My wife was in tears, watching him get ripped away into the van, knowing exactly what was going to happen to him next. But when he returned home, it was the worst day of my life. I wished he never came back. The day he went missing, we thought it would just be a normal school day. Jess dropped off our son John at school that morning, kissed his soft cheek like he likes, and reminded him to zip his jacket. But something was different. Jess was extremely late for a meeting, so instead of doing the usual drill where she walks him into the school, she dropped him off and waited in the car. She sat in the car with her cold fingers pressed against the vents for warmth and watched him walk across the empty yard to the school building. His hand reached the door to open it, and she smiled and drove away. I'd heard her tell it a dozen times. I believed her. I told the police my part too, hugging him and calling him buddy, giving him a glass of milk and telling him I'd help him with his homework tonight. Thinking everything was normal, we all went on with our day. John was at school. Jess was on her way to work. I was at home. That was our morning. But the evening is when something started to go wrong. John always rode the school bus home. He'd usually arrive home before we got home from work. Lita, our neighbor, would meet him and let him in the house and watch a show with him until I or Jess got home from work. She was great, but Lita called me at 3:45. John did not get off the bus. The school couldn't locate him. He hadn't made it to class. I called the police at 4:15 just moments after I left work. I was frantic. I met them at the house. Somewhere between Jess leaving after seeing his arm touch that door and actually entering the school, our sweet John had disappeared. The cameras from inside the school had never caught him in the hallway. The ones outside weren't working properly, so there was no telling where exactly, or he had disappeared. But he never opened those doors. He never walked into his classroom. Everyone in town came together. They searched sewers and alleyways. They scattered through locked backyard fences and tramped through fields and wooded areas in misty, cold weather. The police suspected us at first. It was all pretty normal. Everyone was a suspect. We repeated the sequence of events 100 times to 100 different people. We were quoted and misquoted. Our lives were upended and reputations tarnished. Everyone thought we did something to him. We were newer to the neighborhood, and they were sure we beat John. They were sure John was a good student and beloved by all in the neighborhood, even though he only had 2 friends I had ever met and had recently gotten in trouble for destroying a neighbor's garden. I guess the neighbor forgot about that. We went 2 weeks without any sign of him, until from out of nowhere, a soccer mom and her 13-year-old daughter spotted him in a field a couple of weeks later. He was covered in dirt and grim, but there wasn't even a scratch on him. They recognized his face and clothes from the TV. They said he was smiling, and when they asked him where he was going, he told them, home. They offered him a ride, but he said he would walk. He took the soda they offered, saying he was very thirsty. They called the police and followed him as he walked, crossing roads and yards as he moved towards home. He made it home at 3:15 p.m. that afternoon, 2 weeks later, exactly, with a caravan of cars and people following after him. Jess greeted him at the door. "Mommy," he said before wrapping his arms around her. We both cried in that moment, but I wasn't crying for the reason you might think. The TV called it a miracle. The police chief, who was convinced that I had buried my own son outside town, even half-heartedly apologized after John told him about the bad man in the truck who had swept in and taken him at the school door. John wasn't short on details.